A baby vanishes from his crib without a sound. Days later, his photo appears, older and smiling, with a woman no one can identify. Deep in the forest, beneath layers of soil and lies, something ancient waits, and it has been collecting children for years. It was a quiet morning in the sleepy suburb of Faygrove. The sun filtered through pale curtains. Coffee steamed on the kitchen counter, and a mother's scream shattered the silence. Her baby's crib was empty. No broken window, no forced door, just a single stuffed rabbit on the floor. The police arrived within minutes. The mother clutched the blanket to her chest, trembling. She kept whispering the name Eli. No signs of a struggle, no footprints in the yard. Nothing but silence and the suffocating weight of dread. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood. Doorbell cameras, garage sensors, traffic footage. Hours turned to days. Then, something strange surfaced. A delivery driver's dashcam caught a blurry figure. A woman, holding something small in her arms, walking into the woods. The timestamp? 6 minutes after the reported abduction. Search team flooded the nearby forest. Branches snapped underfoot. Dogs barked wildly. The trees stood tall and still, like witnesses who refused to speak. A child's sock was found snagged on a thorn bush. Bright blue. Still warm. Panic turned into frenzy. Every officer combed the brush with desperation, until a narrow trail led to an abandoned hunting cabin. The door creaked open. Inside, it smelled of mildew and rotting wood. A broken crib sat in the corner, empty baby bottles on the floor, and scribbled on the peeling wall in red crayon, "He is safe now. He belongs to the silence." One officer turned pale. She pointed to something beneath the floorboards. Something moving. Faint whimpers echoed up from the dark. And then, a gloved hand reached down. What they pulled up was not what anyone expected. The bundle they lifted was wrapped in a tattered baby blanket. But it was too light, too still. The room fell silent, every breath held hostage by dread. An officer unfolded the cloth. Inside was a plastic doll, its face crudely drawn over with marker. The doll's mouth was open, stitched with black thread. Its eyes stared blankly into the room. One officer stumbled back, whispering a prayer. The real baby, Eli, was not there, but something else was. Beneath the floorboards, wedged between old planks, they found photographs. Dozens of them. Each photo showed a different baby, some smiling, some sleeping. Each was labeled with a date and a name. None of them were Eli. A detective scanned the images, his hands shaking. "These go back years," he muttered. "Names that never made headlines. Children no one had reported missing. It no longer looked like a single abduction. It looked like a pattern. A long, methodical string of disappearances. Back at the station, forensic teams analyzed the handwriting on the wall. It matched a case file from 4 years ago, one still unsolved. A midwife named Annabelle Griggs. She had vanished after being accused of taking newborns from a maternity ward under the guise of routine testing. No charges were filed. No children were recovered. She was never found. Until now, an expert in criminal profiling was brought in. He studied the crime scene with meticulous calm. "The doll is a placeholder," he said. She wanted someone to *C* a message. The red crayon, the message, the photographs, it was not for ransom. It was a manifesto. The pathologist examined the cabin deeper. Under layers of dust in a locked trunk, they found a book, a child's storybook, torn and yellowed. Inside the cover was a handwritten note. "Asterisk to my sweet ones, taken from the chaos. I gave you the quiet." Asterisk. On the back page, scribbled in red ink, was a new name. Asterisk Eli Jameson. Asterisk. And a date. Tomorrow. The team froze. This was not just a confession. It was a timeline, a plan still in motion. A local tip came in that same evening. A hiker had seen a woman matching Annabelle's description near the river trail. She was holding something, a baby. The trail led to an old flood tunnel, sealed off for decades. By the time the search party reached it, night had fallen. The only sound was the rustle of trees and the low hum of wind. Lights flashed across the moss-covered entrance. A faint sound echoed from inside. Not crying, not footsteps. It was music, a lullaby. soft and slow, and it was coming from deep within the tunnel. Officers drew weapons. They moved in single file, the beam of their flashlights cutting through the damp air. The tunnel walls were damp, painted with handprints. Tiny ones, in red. The lullaby continued, echoing louder, until it suddenly stopped. A single flashlight flickered out. A child's laugh rang out. And then, a shape appeared at the far end of the tunnel. Small, barefoot, holding something that gleamed in the darkness. The figure stepped forward slowly, feet splashing in shallow water. The beam of a flashlight caught the glint. Metal, a surgical tool. Tiny hands clutched it tightly as if protecting a toy. The child's face was pale, blank, eyes distant, too distant for a toddler. He did not speak. He just stared at the officers. And behind him, emerging from the shadows, came a silhouette, taller, thin, unnaturally calm. Annabelle Griggs. Her gray hair hung in tangled ropes around her shoulders. She wore a long, blood-stained nightgown. In her arms, another bundle. This time, it moved. A baby. Eli. Alive, but silent, not crying, not making a sound. Annabelle raised a finger to her lips. Shush, she whispered. He is learning peace. The officers shouted for her to drop the child. She did not flinch. Instead, she backed further into the tunnel, deeper into darkness. With every step, the water grew higher. A current swirled beneath their feet. Do not come closer, she said. Her voice echoed off the stone, soft but commanding. I saved them, from mothers who screamed, from fathers who drank, from homes with fists, not hands. One officer tried to flank her. Annabelle spun toward him, eyes wild. You do not get to take him back. Eli stirred, made a sound, a tiny breath, then a low whimper. She froze. Tears welled in her eyes. He speaks, she whispered. For me. Suddenly, the child beside her, the one with the surgical tool, moved. Fast. He ran toward the officers, but not to attack. He collapsed at their feet, trembling, muttering the same word over and over. Mommy, mommy, mommy. The team grabbed him, shielding him behind them. They advanced toward Annabelle. She retreated farther, clutching Eli tighter. The tunnel groaned. A loud, echoing creak. Then, water, rushing. From behind her, a floodgate cracked open. A wall of black water thundered down. The team screamed for her to stop, to hand the child over. But she stood there, still, smiling. As the water surged toward her, she closed her eyes and whispered, He will be born again in silence. And then the flood hit. The water exploded through the tunnel like a freight train. Officers were thrown backward, crashing into the walls, their flashlights tumbling into the rising tide. The child they had rescued clung to a leg, screaming now, screaming loud and human. One flashlight beam caught a glimpse. Annabelle, swept off her feet, still holding Eli. Her arms did not release him. They disappeared beneath the surge. Then darkness. Nothing but the roar of water and the hollow scream of rushing wind. Backup teams outside scrambled as the entrance to the tunnel burst with pressure. Water sprayed out in a violent plume, carrying debris, wood, plastic, something pale and soft. The first responders rushed in as soon as the current settled. They formed human chains, sweeping the banks, checking every branch, every crevice. No sign of Eli, no sign of Annabelle, until someone shouted, Hey, over here. Near a broken drainage pipe, wedged in a thicket of roots, they found something. A hand, small, blue-tinged, barely moving. Eli, soaked, silent, but alive. He was rushed to the ambulance. He did not cry, did not blink, just stared, eyes wide open, locked on nothing. His tiny fingers were clenched into fists. Inside one, clutched tight, was a strand of gray hair. The EMT gasped, prying it loose. Wrapped around the hair was a thin piece of twine. From it dangled a locket. Inside, 2 pictures, one of Annabelle as a young nurse, and one of a baby. Not Eli, another child, one no one could identify. The questions multiplied. Who was the child in the locket? How many babies had she taken before Eli, and why had none been found? Later that night, police searched the woods again. They found the entrance to another tunnel, unmarked, unmapped, hidden behind years of overgrowth. Inside, the walls were lined with cribs. Dozens, empty, each had a nameplate. Some names matched the photographs, others did not. No footprints, no bodies, just silence. And on one crib, at the very end, hung a new sign, painted carefully in red ink, next to be named. Below it, a blank space, and beneath that, freshly scratched into the wood, one single letter, asterisk asterisk E dot asterisk asterisk. The air inside the tunnel was damp and foul. It reeked of mildew, old wood, and something faintly sweet, decay masked by lavender. The officers moved quietly now. Every creak of their boots echoed like thunder. They were afraid to speak, afraid to disturb whatever presence lingered. A forensic technician snapped photos of the cribs. Each one was hand-carved, each one arranged with surgical precision. Beneath the cribs lay items, baby shoes, rattles, tiny socks folded neatly, memorials or remnants. No one could be sure. One officer knelt beside a crib labeled asterisk Matthew Starr. There were scratch marks on the wood, tiny, desperate gouges, like small fingernails had clawed against it. He stood up quickly, his face pale. The farther in they went, the colder it became. The air thinned. Voices carried strangely. One officer swore he heard humming. A lullaby, the same melody from the first tunnel. They followed it, deeper still. At the end of the passage, they reached a sealed room. An old metal door, rusted shut, bolted from the outside. Someone had not wanted anyone to get asterisk and star, or asterisk out star. They forced it open with a crowbar. The hinges screamed. Inside was a chamber lit by rows of flickering candles. At the center, a crib, newer than the others. Eli's nameplate hung crookedly on it. Inside was no baby, just a single recording device, an old tape recorder, already running. An officer pressed stop, then rewind, then play. A voice came through, calm, steady, feminine. "Annabelle, if you are listening," she said, "then I am gone. I never wanted to be your monster. I only wanted them to sleep, to be safe, to be still." A soft chuckle followed. "You will never find them. They are not yours anymore. They are asterisk mine, Star." The tape crackled, then silence. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed from the entrance of the tunnel. The team turned, weapons drawn. One of the cribs began to rock gently, back and forth, though no wind touched it. A soft whisper seemed to rise from the walls, a word repeated faintly in many voices. "Eli! Eli! Eli!" And then, from the shadows near the far corner, a second locket was found, still warm, still damp. Inside, a photo of Eli, but it was not taken recently. He was older, 3 years older, standing beside a woman, smiling. In the background, rows of cribs, still full. The photo shook in the officer's hands. It defied explanation. Eli, 3 years older than the child they had just rescued, stood in the frame with eyes full of calm. Content, not missing, not afraid. And the woman beside him, her face was partially obscured. But the outline, the high cheekbones, the silver streak of hair, the unmistakable tilt of her head. It was Annabelle, smiling, alive. The background showed more cribs. But unlike the others, these were occupied. Tiny faces, some asleep, some staring directly at the camera, each one with a red thread tied around their wrist. An officer turned the locket over. A single word was carved into the metal. Asterisk, asterisk, sanctuary. Asterisk, asterisk. Suddenly, one of the officers screamed. His flashlight beam jerked across the wall. Something was there, painted in a deep crimson. A mural. A sweeping, hand-drawn image that spanned the entire wall of the sealed room. It showed a dark forest, thick with shadow. Children walked single file down a narrow path, their hands joined. At the head of the line was Annabelle, robed in white, her arms raised like a shepherd guiding lambs. Behind her, floating above the trees, was a stitched mouth, black thread crossing pale lips. Beneath the mural, a sentence was written in looping cursive. Asterisk, asterisk, the world is too loud for angels. Asterisk, asterisk. As they stayed, the room's candles began to flicker violently. One by one, they snuffed out, plunging the room into darkness. A child's giggle echoed from somewhere unseen. Then, a low, slow knock, 3 raps, from the asterisk inside asterisk of the wall. The sound of something being dragged, something small, something breathing. And finally, a child's voice. Clear. Close. No one took me. I asterisk followed asterisk her. The wall to their left shifted. A crack split down its center. Dust fell like snow. Then, the panel began to open, and what lay behind it was not what anyone was prepared for. Behind the shifting wall was a chamber bath in soft, unnatural light. The source? Rows of glowing night lights, plugged into nothing, each one shaped like a different animal. A bear, a rabbit, a lamb. Their light pulsed, slow and rhythmic, as if in time with a heartbeat. The chamber was silent, too silent, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums, that makes you aware of your own breathing. In the center of the room stood a mobile. It rotated gently, though there was no air moving. Dangling from it were tiny shoes, each pair tagged with a name, a date. Some tags were recent, too recent. The air felt heavier here, like something sacred or cursed was buried beneath. One of the officers stepped forward. Her boot sank slightly into the floor. Not wood, not stone, mattresses, layered, compacted, rotting. And beneath them, bones, dozens, small, delicate, some still clothed in decaying pajamas. A scream rose in the back of her throat, but she choked it down. Another officer stumbled back, knocking over a stack of boxes. They spilled open. Blankets, pacifiers, teeth, tiny, pearly white baby teeth, individually wrapped in gauze, labeled, catalogued, as if kept for memory or ritual. On the far side of the room was a chair, a rocking chair, still swaying. Beside it sat a basin filled with water, and in it floated a rubber duck, red-stained. Above the chair hung a large mirror. Its glass was cracked in a web-like pattern, but one detail stood out. Though the room behind them was full of officers, the mirror reflected only *1* figure, a woman in white, holding a child. Neither were physically present in the room, but their eyes, locked directly onto the mirror, directly onto the viewer. A hum began to rise, not from the room, from inside their ears, like a frequency meant for someone else. One officer dropped his flashlight. Another grabbed at his head. Blood trickled from his nose. From the mirror, the woman's lips began to move, but no sound came, only a whisper in their minds. Asterisk, asterisk, he is not yours. He is not alone. Asterisk, asterisk. And then, from the darkness behind the rocking chair, something stepped forward, small, eyes wide, mouth stitched shut. Eli, but older, and walking directly toward them. The officers froze, disbelief rooting them in place. This could not be Eli. Eli was outside, safe, recovering. Yet here he stood, older, silent. His small hands hung at his sides, motionless. But his eyes were ancient, too knowing, too calm. The stitched mouth did not move, but the room suddenly thrummed with presence, a vibration like the hum of electricity through wet wires. And then, the lights in the chamber began to pulse faster. The animals on the night lights twisted. The bear grew sharp teeth. The lamb's eyes turned black. The room shrank inward. The officers staggered. Gravity bent. The air tasted metallic. The older Eli raised a hand. Slowly, deliberately, he pointed at the mobile. The shoes spun faster now, a blur of rubber and fading cloth. The names became unreadable, and from somewhere beyond the walls, a chorus of children's voices rose. Low, melodic, not crying, but chanting. A lullaby in reverse. Words no one recognized, but every syllable felt wrong. The officers tried to back out of the chamber. But the entrance had vanished. Only the mirror remained. And in the mirror, the woman in white was no longer holding a child. Her arms were open now, reaching forward, reaching through the glass. Cracks widened. One officer raised his weapon, shouting. The mirror did not shatter. Instead, it rippled, like water, and her hands broke through. Thin, pale, fingernails scraped the air like claws on a chalkboard. She was not just a ghost. She was Asterisk Coming Star. And Eli, older Eli, he smiled. The stitches across his mouth pulled and snapped. A whisper escaped his lips, not loud, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. Asterisk, asterisk, welcome to the quiet. Asterisk, asterisk. And then the mirror exploded inward. Shards of glass blasted through the room like jagged bullets. One officer dropped, blood pooling beneath him. Another screamed, blinded, as a shard slashed across his face. But no sound escaped the explosion. None. Only a terrible, crushing silence, as if the blast had vacuumed the air out of the world. The glowing night lights flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed the chamber. A heavy, sentient darkness. It breathed. It moved. The older Eli was gone, vanished, but something else stood in his place. Taller, bent, its skin the color of candle wax, glistening and raw. Eyes black, lips sewn shut with thick black wire, and from its chest dozens of tiny hands reached out, grasping, twitching. Each one clenched a piece of something familiar. A rattle, a pacifier, a tiny gold bracelet, all marked with names from the Missing Children registry. The entity stepped forward. The stitched lips moved, but no sound came. Still, the words pressed into their skulls like a cold drill. Asterisk, asterisk, you were never meant to find us. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk, you were never meant to asterisk his star. Asterisk, asterisk. One officer fell to his knees, vomiting. Another fired blindly into the dark. Muzzle flashes lit the room in bursts. But with each flash, the creature was closer. First across the room, then near the mobile, then inches from the barrel of the gun. And then it opened. Not its mouth, its chest. The ribs cracked outward with a sickening wet pop, revealing not organs, but faces. Tiny, infantile, silent, each one staring outward, trapped behind flesh, mouths gaping in voiceless screams. The lullaby returned, not sung, not played, but asterisk felt star, vibrating inside the officer's bones, in every heartbeat, in every breath. The remaining team staggered back, desperate to flee, but the walls pulsed with flesh. The tunnel was closing, breathing, and then a hand grabbed the lead officer's wrist. From beneath the floor, small, childlike, but ice cold, it pulled once, twice, and then the officer's foot sank into the floor. He screamed, but the scream made no sound. The last thing he saw, reflected in a shard of the broken mirror, was his own face, staring back, mouth sewn shut. The mirror shard clattered to the floor. The tunnel groaned, as if exhaling its final breath. And just like that, everything stopped. The hum vanished. The pressure lifted. The night lights blinked back on, one by one. Faint, flickering, but still glowing. The officers who remained struggled to stand. Their ears rang, their eyes burned, and their bodies trembled. But they were alive. Barely. Eli was gone. The creature, gone. All that remained was silence. A still, sacred kind of quiet. The kind that demanded reverence. They carried the wounded out first. The survivors followed, blinking into the light of dawn. Above ground, the world looked normal again. Birdsong, sunlight, ambulances, reporters. But none of them could describe what had happened below. The investigation closed that section of the forest indefinitely. No further entry. No future excavation. The tunnels were sealed with concrete and rebar. But even years later, the soil there stayed cold, frozen, as if touched by something that time could not thaw. Forensic teams tried to analyze the objects recovered, the shoes, the lockets, the photographs, but many of them did not match any known missing child reports. Some names had no records. Some faces had no birth certificates. And the photo of the older Eli, it vanished. No digital trace. No physical copy. Gone. Eli himself? The real Eli? He survived. But he never spoke again. Not a single word. Doctors claimed psychological trauma. His mother called it something else. The silence he was given. He drew constantly. Always children. Always forests. Always a woman with silver hair, smiling with too many teeth. She appeared again and again, guiding, welcoming, never harming, always waiting. Therapists asked Eli why he drew her. He never answered. But one day, he handed his mother a picture. It showed himself, grown up, standing beside a path in the woods, and behind him, a line of children, each with a red string around their wrist, each smiling, each silent, and in the corner of the page, in neat crayon script, he had written, "When the world is too loud, we go back. Back to the quiet." The case was never closed, because there was no one to charge, no one to prosecute, no crime that fit the shape of what happened. Just holes, in the ground, in the record, in the lives of families still searching for answers. But for those who survived, the lesson remained. Some silences are not empty, some places are not lost, and some truths are buried not to be forgotten, but to protect what is left above. Because the most terrifying monsters are not the ones that scream. They are the ones that whisper, and sometimes they sound like lullabies.